Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Beautiful. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Beautiful.
Hey everyone, it's Tony from the Handlebar Workshops. Today we're in the kitchen workshop and we're making beer. Previously I made a 3-part series on how to brew a small batch of beer, a 1-gallon size batch of beer. I'll leave the link down below and I encourage you to go watch that before you watch this. The procedures are pretty much identical except in that one we made a 1-gallon extract kit, something like this. In this episode we're doubling it. And then rather than putting it in the bottles, I'm going to be putting it in the kegs. So I'm going to skip over a lot of the brewing part because that's identical to the one from the previous video. But there's going to be some new things that I want to introduce you to. For instance, this is the pot I made the 1-gallon batch in. And this is the one I'm using to heat up my sparge water now. I'm going to be brewing my new 2-gallon batch in here. Right now the grains are steeping. I've got 2 gallons of water in here and 1 gallon in here for the sparge water. This will give me plenty of room, so when I add the malt extract, I don't have to worry about a boil over and making a mess because I've got plenty of space here. There's about this one, water only comes up to about here right now. And when I add in another gallon, it only comes to here. So I got plenty of room for the hot break. But other than that, for right now, that's about it. There's some other things down the road that we'll get to, and we'll see them when we get there. But, you know, it wouldn't be a day of brewing beer without a, no, this is just coffee. It's only 10:30 in the morning. I woke up about an hour ago. I got to caffeinate before I can alcoholinate. So you may recognize this as my 1-gallon fermenter. Obviously the 1 gallon goes there. I'm not going to be able to fit 2+ gallons in this bucket. So I went and got this one. This is a polycarbonate food-safe bucket, and it's already got the divisions on there. You can kind of see here, which is really nice. So I should end up somewhere between, well, somewhere over here, about the 8-quart. That's 2 gallons, 8 quarts. I got a new lid, and I got to drill a hole into it to put the airlock in, just like this one is here. Beer's just about done, so I gotta get ready to cool it down and then transfer it to here. This is the new lid for my new fermentation bucket. In order to fit an airlock in there, we're gonna have to put a hole in there. You have these little grommets, they're called, and you drill a hole through the lid, and then you can stick this through there, and the lid sits in between in that little line there. Question is what size? Didn't exactly say. Got this, by the way, at the local homebrew shop. It's right about 3/8 inches. So that's where I'm going to start. The outside diameter is going to get into that little seam there. Alright, so there's 1/2 inch. And we're not deformed too badly. So I'm going to try with 1/2 inch. This is a 3/8 inch bit, and I'm going to put it off center here, that much like my old fermentation bucket. That way if I need to maneuver it around inside the little fridge I use for fermenting, I have some room there. Rather than being smack dab in the middle, I won't have any room at all to move, depending on how tall it is. Now I'm not sure if you can see this too well here. Yeah, there we go. You can see like over here, there's a flat part and then it domes out a bit. So I'm going to try and get it in the flat part. So that's the hole for the 3/8 inches. Now that's not going to be big enough, but that's the biggest bit I have right now. I'm going to put in a step bit. And has the sizes listed there. I'm going to go to 1/2 inch, which is this step right here. So there it is, nice 1/2 inch hole. Nice and clean. There's no tear out on either side. So now we're going to try and fit this rubber grommet in this little hole. It's looking good. I want it to be nice and tight. Not too tight. I think that might be too tight still. May need to go up another step on that drill. So now I put that little grommet back in there. That looks like it'll work.
So how can you have a bourbon barrel porter without a bourbon barrel? Well, what you gotta do is you gotta get yourself some bourbon, and then you gotta get yourself a barrel. This is what Northern Brewer sends in its kit, and they come out as little cubes of dark oak, toasted oak. But I'm afraid these are never going to soak up enough, so I went and I found this at my Homebrew store. These are heavy toast oak chips. So it kind of looks more like an oak chip. And that's going to have more surface area, more nooks and crannies for the bourbon to soak into. So what we'll do is we'll add these to the bowl, and then we'll add the bourbon to the bowl, let the wood soak up the bourbon, and then tomorrow we'll add it into the fermenter. That way it will release its bourbony, oaky, burnt goodness into the beer, and it'll make it taste just like it was aged in bourbon barrels when actually it was bourbon-soaked oak chips.
I've already added some of the wood chips, but I think we need more. I really don't know how much this is. I'm just kind of going by sight. And I've got 2 gallons of beer. It's kind of like, well, how much oak would 2 gallons of beer come into contact with? So I got some Buffalo Trace bourbon. I hear it's supposed to be pretty good. I'm not a big bourbon aficionado, but it really tastes good with beer. Man, that smells good. Trick is to use enough for it to soak in, but not so much that you're wasting a bunch of good bourbon. Take a sip for myself here. Good. Alright, and we got a lid to go on this as well. And we'll let this sit and marinate overnight, and then we'll add this to the fermenter tomorrow sometime. So now it's time to add the bourbon-soaked oak chips to the beer. At this point it is beer. It's fermented, or mostly fermented, but it's going to sit another week in the fermenter. You can see up to here we got some poison lines. The poisoning has since dissolved back in. There's a layer of silt on the bottom of trube, and that's good. Right now, in here is mainly carbon dioxide, so we wanted to disturb that as little as possible. Alright, so we want as little splashing. When we dump this in here, this is going to introduce some oxygen, but we got to minimize that as much as possible to avoid skunking the beer. Now, before we even get that far, we've got Star San in the solution here. We're going to squirt our fingers. We're going to squirt around here. Remember, we want to make sure we keep sanitation as good as possible here. Now this is bourbon-soaked oak chips. There should not be much bacteria introduced there, but it's still going to sanitize the bowl itself. Oh, that smells good. So gently open the top. Gently move it off to the side over a bit like that. Keep as much covered as possible. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pour this right in. Alright, start sand around here again. Cover it back up. Seal it back up. And we're good. So now we just put it back in the fermentation chamber for another week. Let the flavors meld, and then we can throw it in a keg. I know that when I say keg, most of you are thinking about the big metal barrel thing sitting in a trash bin full of ice that shows up in college house parties all the time. But that's not what homebrewers use. That's a big complicated process to fill it, and only the most advanced homebrewers are doing that kind of thing. Most homebrewers are using a cornelius keg or a corny keg. This is kind of a mini version. Most of them are a 5 gallon or so. This is 2.5, and this is what I'll be using to keg my beer in. One of the nice things about it is that it's very easy to get the beer in. Just take that off and you just pour your beer right in there. Corny kegs got their start in the soft drink business. Coke and Pepsi would ship them with the syrup and the water pre-mixed, and all the soft drink dispenser had to do was hook on the CO2 tank here and then hook their tap up here. And we do the same thing for beer. We fill it up with beer, then we hook our CO2 to this, and we put this out to the tap. And this is how we get the beer out. This is a representation of a corny keg. The little gas inlet is up here, the gray one, and the black beer outlet is here, or liquid outlet, whichever you want to put in here. This gets connected to a CO2 tank, and the CO2 comes in here. It both pressurizes the tank and it puts carbonation into the beer. As you open up the tap over on this side, the pressure here pushes the beer up through this tube and out to the tap, so it slowly empties itself out through this tube. So when we're looking to clean the keg, we got to make sure that we're cleaning the outlet, the inlet, both tubes, and the keg itself. That's with the OxyClean and with the Star San. Let's get to that. All right, so here we have our Cornelius keg. Basically, just use a wrench. You unloosen these. The little caps come off, the little ball lock caps come off. And you get the little tube for the inlet. And you get the long tube for the outlet. And then you've got the top. So I've pulled the fermenter out of the fermentation chamber. And I've got the keg down on a chair down below here. I'm going to take some Star San here and I'm going to spray it around. Take the lid off. So now I'm going to take the auto siphon straight out of the Star San, and I'm going to put it into the beer, because it is now beer. I can see exactly how far down the auto siphon goes, so I don't disturb any of the tube that's along the bottom here. Feed the other side in here. There's still foam in here from the Star San. Remember, don't fear the foam. So when you're doing the auto siphon, you want to plug one end with your thumb, make sure it's sanitized, pull up on the racking cane, and then push down and move your thumb at the same time. Now we got a nice siphon going here. While that's filling up, I'm going to start putting the keg together. I've got Star San in here. I'm going to be taking things out of here for the keg. For instance, we have the tube with a rubber O-ring that goes on there. And that goes in the out. This is the gas inlet tube and another O-ring. Goes on like that. And into the inside. And here's the poppet valve. And here's the poppet that goes in the valve.
This one with the red O-ring and the star-shaped bottom goes on the inlet side. I got to keep an eye on here, make sure that the bottom of my siphon doesn't come out of the beer. And similarly, we have the black poppet valve. See the black O-ring, remember black for beer. And then here's the poppet that goes in there. This end goes into the top here. So it just goes in just like this. And you can see just like that. And that goes on the end. So now that I'm getting near the bottom, I'm going to tip the fermenter forward a bit so I get a deeper amount of beer right at the bottom of the auto siphon. All right, I've hit the end of the beer. I'll have to use some of that beer to get the final gravity. Now before we finish this, we got to put some keg lube onto the O-rings. Make sure that they're nice and sealed so none of the carbon dioxide gets out of there. I'm going to put some more keg lube on the big O-ring. So I'm going to put some on my fingers and then just run the O-ring through my fingers. And get it on there nice and all over the place here. Let me pull out the top. Put the ring on the top. Just like that. And put the top down inside. Got to get these down tight so none of the CO2 gets out. Got to keep everything sanitized. And now we can talk about carbonation. Now we got the beer in the keg, we need some way to get it out. And we need to carbonate it. Since I didn't add any sugar, we can't count on the yeast to produce any more carbon dioxide like they would in a bottle. So this is a 5-pound cylinder of carbon dioxide, CO2. And in order to get the carbon dioxide out of here and into the keg, there is a regulator. And it's pretty easy to put together. You just screw this onto the tank here. And then you turn this red knob here to regulate as much air pressure or as much CO2 pressure to the keg as you want. Now we need a line that goes from here to the keg. The guy at the Homebrew store gave me this vinyl tubing. It's a thick-walled vinyl tubing that he said is needed for the pressure over days and weeks that it's going to be pressurized. It's got to go on the barb to this ball lock valve and then on the barb of the regulator. It's in some very hot water to kind of loosen it up. Maybe we can get it on here. There we go. All the way on. And just put the water back in the microwave for a few more minutes. Remember kids, be careful when microwaving water because it could explode on you when you take it out. So be careful. But in the meantime, I've been soaking this in the hot water and I've been putting this in. Hopefully the heat from the barb will also help it bend a bit better. And be sure you put on your hose clamps before you do this step, otherwise you're going to have to cut it off and redo it. Well, the guy wasn't lying. It fit. It's on nice and tight. Alright, so now we put the regulator onto the CO2 tank. Alright, we got you in close. Alright, so this is the regulator here. What we've got here is we got the tank pressure. The amount of pressure that's in the tank here. I haven't turned it on yet, so there's nothing there. This is the pressure that will be going into the line over to the keg. Pull this back. Let me put it on there. I've got some keg lube on this O-ring right here. So it slides right over. It's a nice solid snap in there. So you can watch this dial as I turn on the tank. See how it's shot way up there? I'm going to turn the tank all the way on. And here you can see we're about 8 psi. This is a porter which would be served around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and it needs about 1.85 to 2.15 volumes of CO2. In order to get that volume of CO2 at that temperature, I got to put in about 8 psi. This will probably also be a good serving pressure as well. So now we're connected here. We've got this on. We're good to set here, so we're going to push this in to lock it in. And now we stand back a bit just in case I screwed something up. And we turn this on. Okay, so that dropped down. Need to clear out the headspace. Got to clear out all the air, so we fill it all with CO2. So the plus says here. We turn it up. And we're right about 8 psi. Try purging the headspace again. It gets all the oxygen out of there and fills the headspace completely with CO2. Alright, I think we're good, so we'll lock this in place. And I think we're good. Now I just gotta let it sit for about 5 days, and then we'll be able to attach the outlet to here and be able to take a drink and see how it turned out. It's been 5 days since we put the beer into the keg, and it's had plenty of time to carb up and chill down. So let's see how we did. I put the keg and the CO2 tank in my fermentation chamber since I don't have a kegerator at the moment. I'll eventually get there, but I'm not there yet. So in the meantime, instead of having an actual faucet like you might be used to seeing, I've got a picnic tap. If you remember, the gas in is gray, G for gas, and beer is B for black. So black is out. And just like the other quick connect, you just pull this portion back and you just push it on and let it snap shut. And I got some beer in the line already from the pressurization. To speak a little bit about pressurization, you got to kind of balance your system between the amount of pressure being put in by the CO2 tank and the amount of resistance that the hose gives the beer as it comes out. If you got too much pressure and not enough resistance, you're going to get a lot of head. And vice versa, if you've got not enough pressure and too much resistance, it's going to be a slow pour. So let's see how we did here. So I got some pretty good head on there. So that means that the system is pretty well balanced, at least at this pressure. If I have to go up in pressure, I may have to worry about not having enough hose here. It looks good. I don't see any trube or anything floating in there. It's a porter, so you can't exactly say it's clear. Definitely smell the bourbon. Taste the bourbon. It's not overpowering. There's a bit of the crispiness from the oak in there. As a porter, it's not supposed to have too much of a hop flavor or aroma to it. So this is it's very malty. It's very good. I've brewed this one before, just not in this size, and I put it in bottles, and I like the way that turned out. This is still pretty good too. Actually, I enjoy this more than the bottles. My bottles, I always had a tendency, or always had an issue getting them to carb up properly. And this seems to be carbing up pretty well. You can see there's lacing around the sides. See, it looks pretty good. Let's bring it in closer here. So you can kind of see that lacing there. That's good. See, that looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Well, I thank you for watching. And if you like this video, give me a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And be sure to ask any comments or questions down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, till next time. I'll see you then. Bye.